So, you're new to Hearts of Iron 4 and you're wondering what nation to play. Well, no worries, man. I got your back. I'll be showing you a couple of nations that you can play to get started in Hearts of Iron 4, to learn some of the basic and necessary mechanics to get you through the game. And I've got a couple of nations that you can play just so you don't have to worry too much about the additional advanced mechanics that this game sometimes offers. So let's get started, shall we? For our first nation, it's a very special nation. You actually cannot just play it in the normal game. For this nation, you'll actually have to go out of Hearts of Iron 4. Alright? Then you're gonna want to go to your Steam library. Okay? And once you're here now, you're going to have to do something for me. You're gonna have to go to Hearts of Iron 4. Alright? Look for it in your library list. Right click and press uninstall. Alright, good job. Now you can really start thinking about whether you really do want to waste your life this way, or whether you actually have better stuff to do and should probably go work a job. Alright, so at number 5 we have China. China is a very good nation to get started in Hearts of Iron 4 because you'll be going to war by 1937, and China isn't particularly strong as a country, but you start off with big enough of a military industry to produce enough guns and artillery to at least survive the first couple of years of the war. You know, you'll also learn how to be on the defensive for a little bit, which I think is a very important skill to master in the game. As for example, you'll have to do it as Poland, you'll have to do it as Greece, you'll have to do it as the Soviets, you'll even have to do it as France. You know, you pretty much need to learn how to be on the defensive successfully for a little while, as a lot of countries in the game. As China, you will not have to worry about Air Force, you won't have to worry about Navy. As China, you just have to focus on producing enough guns and not losing the majority of your territory in the first months of the war, alright? Because else you won't be having the factories to produce the guns and the artillery. As China, you will probably suffer a lot of losses because you won't have the strongest army when you start a war, at least as beginner. But as time goes on and on, you will be able to expand your army a bit, and you'll hopefully be able to build up the quality of your divisions, which will definitely help you out a lot in just holding off the Japanese. The Japanese will naval invade you probably multiple times and open up multiple fronts, you know, and make you spread your army out a little bit more, but you really shouldn't have to worry about that for too long, at least. As long as you just put enough factories into producing guns and artillery, you should be fine, and you should easily be able to just survive the first couple of years of the war. As China, you won't be doing a world conquest. All you have to focus on is not losing to the Japanese, alright? It's a very good introduction towards combat, you know, land combat, and it's the only thing you have to focus on too. If you like fielding a large army too, you know, or you really want to play a country that can have a large army, then China is definitely the way. As China, it's also very forgiving to play because you can afford to have a lot of casualties and you'll always be able to replace them because China practically has infinite manpower in the game. It's something known in the community too. Like, if you were lacking manpower as a country, oh yeah, just go capture a couple of Chinese territories and you'll have enough manpower for the rest of the game. That's what it sometimes comes down to. No, but really, China has so much manpower. I don't think you'll ever have to go to extensive conscription because I think you start off with like 1.5 million manpower anyways, you know. So yeah, you can fill a ridiculously large army. And if you manage to successfully defend for a while, you know, and you can't push out the Japanese, no worries. The USA will join the war in around 1941 as they will attack the Philippines. And then, yeah, USA is pretty much going to take care of Japan for you, and you won't have to do much whatsoever. In almost every one of my games, I've noticed that the USA successfully invades mainland Japan somehow. You don't have to worry about it for too long, you know, and you should just focus on defending and upgrading your divisions, and you'll get to know how combat modifiers work a bit too, because Realistically, combat is all about modifiers, and if you actually try to learn the system a little bit and check out some of the in-game battles that are happening, you'll see that the Japanese will start off with a lot of debuffs, but your army will also start off with a lot of debuffs. As the war progresses, the modifiers will change. Japan will start gaining more and more attack and more initiative against your divisions, and you'll need to improve your divisions a little bit. You'll also see how those stats interact with each other and what variables are at play when it comes to combat. You get to know a lot of the different terrain, what is more defensible, what is not, and I think it's definitely one of the best nations, to practice over and over again. As China, you can pretty much lose 95% of your territory. You won't capitulate due to Chinese unity, and you'll be able to use the other warlords and have them fight alongside you to push them back. So it really shouldn't be that hard, but I think as a beginner, China can be very challenging, and it's just the right amount of challenging because you don't have to worry about much aside from the army. But I guess there's a lot of additional mechanics in the game that you definitely should learn early, and that's why China is only at number 5. Okay, so at number 4, we're directly gonna have some more controversial picks. At number 4, we have Portugal and Hungary. The reason why Portugal and Hungary have made it to number 4 is because of two specific paths that you can take that allow you to turn your tiny country into something that is actually relatively comparable to like a decent starting major. For Hungary, I'm talking about Austria-Hungary here, and for Portugal, I'm talking about the Portugal monarchist Brazilian path, in which you get the possibility to merge Brazil and Portugal into one country again, which I think is really awesome. For Portugal, therefore, you're going to have a decently sized industry and you're going to have close to 50 million manpower by doing so, which is awesome. I think reformables are some of the things you should explore first, as they're probably the most interesting stuff for players to play, and it is always really cool to turn your small country into something that suddenly has millions and millions of manpower. So that's why I put Portugal and Hungary here. As Portugal, when you reform like that Porto-Brazilian country, you'll be able to easily invade Spain and get the entirety under Iberia even under your control before you prepare for a good invasion of Axis-controlled Europe or Africa. I mean, I'm going to assume you're logically going to side with the allies, because there's not really a reason to declare on them. I mean, you can try to get in a sneaky naval invasion, but I think you'll die of old age waiting for it. As Hungary, you can reform Austria-Hungary, which is awesome. You can just merge Hungary, Austria, and Czechoslovakia, and even some part of Yugoslavia into one empire, and you can get access to, I'm sure, at least 40 plus million. I don't know it off the top of my head. Population, which is awesome. You'll also have a lot of resources and a pretty big industry. I don't know. I feel like Porto, Brazil, and Hungary and Austria-Hungary can really be compared to one another as like being kind of equally strong, but as Austria-Hungary, you will also be in a good position to invade Romania and Yugoslavia if you wish to do so, which I think is also very nice. You can pretty much get the entirety of the Balkans under your control very easily. If you side with the Axis, at least, choose to give up Sudetenland, or you can still go to war with the Axis if you choose to do so by just not giving up Sudetenland and joining the Allies as World War II kicks off. So yeah, it's really up to you what you want to do. Again, two nations that are very, very good because you don't have to focus on Navy too much and on Air Force. So you can really take some more time, as I said, to focus on that land combat again, because, I think it's very, very important. All right, so at number 3, we have two very contrasting nations, and it is Japan and the USA. Before you stare daggers at me, let me clarify. All right, they're number 3 for very different reasons. The reason why Japan is number 3 is because Japan has a very, very important role in World War II historically and in the game too. And Japan can be a very, very fun country to play for a lot of players. I think the concept of just playing Japan is just wow. The problem with Japan is that Japan doesn't have the ability to get a really large industry. It lacks a good amount of industrial slots, in my opinion, to really have a good industry compared to who you'll be going up against, such as Britain and the USA. And invading China is one of the hardest things a player will learn how to do properly, because China has no supply and China will just infinitely just wall. I mean, just make a wall of divisions against yours that you cannot break through. China will keep attacking your divisions over and over again until they break through, and especially with no supply, it's easily to get your high quality Japanese divisions destroyed and to lose a lot of guns in those territories due to attrition, which sucks. It's a hard part of the game. Supply. There's not much you can do to improve it, as China just has like no supply in general. There's barely any supply hubs. But if you can do so successfully, that's already a very good thing, and that's kind of the hardest part of the early game. The later part of the game will be you attacking, striking against the Philippines and Indonesia, which will bring the USA into the war. But the problem as Japan is you don't really understand Navy. So if you give it enough time, the USA fleet is almost guaranteed to destroy yours, and you won't be able to do any kind of naval invading and get all of your convoys raided, as you are practically an island nation, which is not very good for Japan, making it one of the reasons why it's number 3, because Navy is just way too important. But it also makes it to number 3 because it's one of the best nations you can actually main in the game, and one of the best nations to play with friends in multiplayer. I think Japan is very, very fun to play. So at number 3, we have the USA. The reason why the USA comes at number 3 is because it's the perfect nation to learn how to produce good and quality equipment. You have all the resources in the world, and you have all of the industry in the world too. I mean, that's really, really good and awesome. It's also one of the reasons why it comes at number 3 is because having a virtually unbeatable economy during all stages of the game and having all the resources you could ever ask for kind of removes the difficulty of the entire game, and it's not the Axis experience whatsoever. One of the major reasons the Axis often loses in the game is due to a lack of rubber, due to it being required for producing planes. And any kind of influential equipment kind of requires resources, and resource management is a very, very critical aspect of economy, especially when it comes to multiplayer. So I feel like the USA is just as good as it is bad of a good learning nation for beginners, because it is very overpowered. Historically, it is correct, but still, if you main USA, the game is significantly easier for you. So do with that as you will. But it's definitely a fun country to play at all times with some friends. So definitely give USA a try. It's a different kind of playstyle, but it's super, super fun to have so much industry, so much manpower, so much resources, and to just be the strongest nation in the game by far. Right, coming in at number 2, we have Italy and the United Kingdom. Pretty much why the UK and Italy fit in here is because they have some really, really strong focus trees, in my opinion, that are also very fun to play. They also have very good alternate history paths, and on both countries you actually have very nice reformable nations, which the USA and Japan don't have, for example. What is really nice is that these countries are also very good for learning Navy. The Italian Navy is very strong, so you can build it up and build and defeat the British Navy. And the British Navy is strong enough that you can continue building up and pretty much defeat every single other navy in the game. I mean, these two nations are just perfect for world conquest, to be honest. And they're really fun while you're doing it too. As Italy, you can just reform the Roman Empire, and you can even bring back the Pope. As the UK, you can bring back Oswald Mosley, form the EU. Yeah, you can actually form the EU as fascist Britain, or you can just like form the Imperial Confederation, a concept that historically happened but never made it through. You can actually complete that in game and do all of these cool IDs. Maybe not so much for Britain's communist tree or Italy's communist tree, but these focus trees are amazing, and I think they're the goat of the focus trees, with maybe a couple of other countries that have decent focus trees, but couldn't make it on the list. But by far, these are two of the most fun nations to play. You can build an air force, you can build a navy, you can build good ground forces. It is just awesome. But on these nations, it is actually inviting and fun to learn navy. And I love this about these countries. Britain and Italy are the two nations that I learned to play Navy on first. Because on those two countries, you don't really have to invest in Navy, but it's very fun to do so, and it can pay off very quickly. And I love that about these countries, because you just have the freedom of choice. And you can invest in Air Force or tanks a bit more, but you really don't have to invest in Navy if you don't want to. However, if you want to, you can still do it on these nations, and that's what makes them awesome. Okay, so at number 1, we have Germany and the USSR. The reason Germany is a very good nation to play is because you'll need to learn to deal with pressure a little bit, pressure from the allies, as you'll be cut off from rubber for your plane production, and you'll also need to, watch your time a little bit because you'll need to invade Poland, Benelux, France, Denmark, Norway, and even the Soviets later. The more time you give them to prepare, the harder it's going to become for you to invade them, at least when it comes to the Soviets for sure. Germany is a perfect nation because geographically speaking, they're in the perfect position to try out tanks and to produce a lot of them. They also have the steel for them, which is very good, of course. And yeah, I mean, Europe is just perfect for using tanks because Europe has all the supply necessary for using big divisions and also has all of the planes, which are, you know, the ideal territory for and conditions to use your tanks in, of course. The war will get progressively harder and harder as Germany, so that is kind of a good thing. You will learn the game the hard way. You will eventually have to do Barbarossa, where you do your massive all out offensive into the USSR and see if you can conquer them with the forces that you have prepared to capture their territory. Of course, it is not easy, and I don't think it's going to be easy to even after a couple of times of doing it. It still requires some good planning, and you can't just do it on autopilot. Germany also has a really good alternate history path where you go with the German Empire and bring back Kaiser Wilhelm II from exile. And yeah, you just reform the Central Powers essentially. It would be really cool if you do that with a friend who like plays Austria-Hungary, or even bring in another friend who plays like the Turks and they play the Ottoman Empire. You can have a blast with the three of you again, making the Central Powers. As the USSR is the country that you should probably play after you have played a lot of Germany and understand what makes Germany strong and what allows Germany to easily push into your territory. Then it's time to play the USSR. Else it's gonna be near to impossible to hold them if you don't really understand what makes Germany strong. But the best follow-up nation is the USSR by far, because the USSR has the ability to be just as strong as the entire Axis combined if the player knows what they're doing. The USSR can really just be one hell of a juggernaut or a behemoth comparable to the United States, at least late game, you know. And surprisingly, the USSR starts off actually surprisingly strong, but gets weaker as the game goes on due to Stalin's political paranoia causing him to purge nearly the entirety of his military personnel that is of good quality, of course. I mean, you can always go alternate history, but if you go the historical path, you will definitely lose some of your most valued military personnel, and that sucks a little bit. But you will learn the game the hard way, and you will learn to perform well under pressure, because yeah, the Germans will put a massive amount of pressure on you as they try to Barbarossa you. It's not easy to hold them, and forgive yourself if it doesn't work out the first couple of tries you try to hold them back. But you will learn this way. Trust me, you will learn this way the hard way and the best way. Everything from tanks to logistics to planes, it's all packed in that Barbarossa package that I want you to dive into very early. And those are going to be two of the best nations for you to learn the game quickly on. There's some of the harder ones for sure, but I think it's better to play them early because it will change the way you see the game entirely. The game is just as much of a preparation and planning game as it is a war game, and it's better to learn that earlier than later because I don't want you guys to struggle while trying to complete some of the alternate history paths on minors that often requires a meticulous amount of planning, and it's very good to learn that rather earlier than later in my book. So guys, these will be all of the nations that I recommend to beginners or anyone who wants to play a strong nation in Hearts of Iron 4 right now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and share this video with other people who might be new to the game and don't know what country to play, as I made this video specifically for them. I hope I at least got one person to smile with the memes I tried to put in the video, as I hope to kind of make them a bit relatable to the experienced players too. And I wish you much luck on your HOI4 campaigns and have an awesome day everybody.